Okay, hi everyone. My name is John Studarus. I'm a auditor, so one of my jobs is I'm responsible for taking a look at SaaS-based service providers, cloud-based service providers, companies that I really help companies that are looking to move into a cloud environment. My main type of customers I work with are pharma, banking, finance. So I sort of hold their hands when they identify cloud or SaaS-based services they're moving into that they want to move into. I identify, make sure that company is providing an adequate level of service and meets their compliance needs. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about going briefly through some compliance requirements, and then also what some common pitfalls that I've seen in these last 10, 15 years, and then also how OpenStack can be used to solve some of these compliance issues. Okay, so first of all, there's a bazillion compliance regulations out there worldwide. Credit card industry's got their own set. I'm pretty sure people are familiar with American Express, Discover Card, MasterCard, Visa, PCI DSS. The US has a whole bunch. Things across, FDA's got a bunch. Various states have some. We got Sarbanes-Oxley for financials. The EU's got their own set of data protection laws. UK is going to come out with some, especially with the split in Asia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, People's Republic of China. They've got their own set. Some of them aren't quite laws, they're just sort of letters. And then also the various companies have got their internal compliance requirements, and a lot of times those will be even more stringent. But they also boil down to a bunch of well-known compliance controls people know about. So access control, authentication, repudiation, and whatnot. So you can take them all, boil them down into a set. So one of the most common ones I see is lack of segmentation. So this is a SaaS provider might take all of their companies, all of their customers, and put them together in one installation of an application. So there's no segmentation of customers across this implementation. So what you end up seeing, and I actually have seen this happen quite a bit, is if there's a bug in the application layer, one customer can see another customer's data. And oftentimes these applications are within the same industry. So you might have 50 pharma companies using the exact same application instance. And if there's a bug in the application level, pharma company A is going to see data for pharma company B. So in OpenStack, really, there's a bunch of segmentation you can use, virtual machine segmentation, network segmentation. Leverage those things. Don't rely on application level segmentation because one bug in your application level and you're going to run into things, as well as encryption can be used. So access control, one of the common failures I see across access control is shared accounts. Companies that might have a shared account that their support staff uses that is the same across all environments, or encryption keys. Sometimes companies will set up a solution and they'll use the same encryption keys across all their customers. So what that means, and you see this across a bunch of different cloud technologies, it's not OpenStack specific, is various different customers will end up with their data encrypted with the same keys, which could lead to a compromise if they get a hold of the encrypted data. So what I recommend here is use role-based access control and Keystone. Be good about setting up your accounts. Give individual users their own account, base them off of roles. Don't do shared accounts. Segment your process accounts as finely as possible. So each customer has their own process accounts as opposed to using one master process account across all the customers. Key management and encryption. So we talked about this briefly, but do occasionally see shared keys, shared encryption keys being used across multiple customers in a cloud environment. Also see quite a bit of weak encryption and do-it-yourself encryption, where companies go through and they put together their own encryption routines, which encryption's sort of difficult mathematically. So real recommendation is don't do it yourself. There's plenty of good encryption routines out there. And also, you need to stay on top of what encryption is really adequate nowadays. Every year, NIST does a good standard. They're a U.S. Federal institution, government institution that maintains a list of what encryption standards are acceptable, what key lengths are acceptable, what algorithms are still acceptable. Within OpenStack, Barbican, they had a great workshop a couple of days ago. I walked through that. But they've got a great way you can use them to generate keys, manage your keys so you're not hard coding keys into your cloud environment. Data retention. A lot of SaaS providers, they want to make sure you never leave. So if you do leave a SaaS service or a cloud service, sometimes they'll actually hold on to your data after you leave, which is a big concern if your data is private. Because their feeling is, hey, you might come back someday, and we want to keep your data readily available so when you do come back, we can quickly turn it on. But really, that's a big concern because you don't want to have your data living out in the cloud somewhere, a company that you no longer have a contractual relationship with. So when you're working with a cloud provider, or if you're running a cloud service, you need to have good principles in place that when a customer contract does terminate, you let them know, you give them their data back, and then within a fixed amount of time, you do remove it across the system in all locations. With the caveat is there are some legal requirements in some cases, medical records, some other stuff where you do need to keep the data. Those are very sort of application specific. Capacity planning. So this is sort of an interesting one. Sometimes companies just aren't aware, the cloud providers aren't aware if they're running some sort of SaaS provider of exactly how much load they can really handle. So they turn on a cloud environment for you and they say, hey, no problem, we monitor 24 hours a day, we can handle any sort of spike in load. Unfortunately, by the time the spike in load appears, you're not going to be able to ramp up, turn on equipment manually by hand. So the recommendation is go through, have some projections when you're bringing new customers on board, how quickly your customers are going to ramp up, so you know how much hardware you're going to need if you're running your own cloud service, cloud environment. You know what your failover situation is that your secondary location has just as much capacity as the first. If run into situations where the secondary location, there isn't enough hardware there, or the hardware there doesn't match the primary location, so there's issues with failing over. Event monitoring. Some cloud providers, SaaS providers, they don't have situational awareness of what's going on. One of the key questions I always ask when I walk in the door to find out how situationally aware a company is or a cloud provider is, well, tell me how many failed logins you had last week. If they can give me a good report, that means, okay, they've got a good idea. But I've run into places where I ask that question and they have no idea. They say, well, we didn't have any failed logins last week. Well, okay, what about last month? We didn't have any failed logins last month. That sets off a real red flag, mainly because they either don't have a monitoring system or their monitoring system is broken, that they're not getting good reports back, or they've never gone through and tested it. So really, what you need to have in place is event logs. There are plenty of logging tools out there that'll grab OpenStack logs, process them, give you good reports, things really identify what anomalies are in place, what's outside of the norm that you need to go and run down. And most of all, you got to go through and validate those before you actually need it. Go through, test it. Run a failed log and run some sort of suspicious activity, and make sure that the reporting system identifies it. And last but not least, being secure and compliant, it isn't easy. In the US, we call it, having grit, which, determination, and sometimes it does take a lot of hard work. Most of all, when your auditor shows up, someone like me, please be nice to them. We're just trying to do our job and help you run a better environment. Thank you, everyone.